Well, good morning. Illinois in Focus Daily. Just putting out the note that we are live. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out. Each and every weekday morning, you can join us at America's Talking Network for the live show, giving you what you need to know to get your day going here in Illinois. Don't forget to check out the news clips and show segments, not just from Illinois, but from all across the country, at America's Talking Network, and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and you'll find it. All right, so tons to tackle this morning. Illinois lawmakers coming back for fall veto session, so that kicks back in. Will they carry through the whole week? They didn't last week. They were scheduled for 3 days last week, and they only went Tuesday and Wednesday, canceling Thursday. What are we going to see for the last 3 days here scheduled before the end of the year? They do have lame duck session coming up in early January before the new General Assembly seated. We'll talk about some of that. And in particular, Governor J.B. Pritzker not sure anything needs to be done to counter what Democrats may see as objectionable policies coming from the Trump administration, while Republicans are saying, listen, Illinois, we need to get in line to get some economic growth. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the energy policies that Illinois has and how they may come into some conflict with an incoming Trump administration. So stay tuned for that. But up next, Governor J.B. Pritzker asked about President-elect Donald Trump's policy of mass deportations, and in particular, the idea of declaring a state of emergency to allow for a mass deportation program. Pritzker was asked about that yesterday. We'll share that with you and hear some of what Republican Minority Senate Leader John Curran had to say last week about Pritzker's stance in front of the incoming Trump administration. So that's coming up here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Obviously, we're here live each and every weekday morning, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you get the updates. Or if you don't get that notification via YouTube, just come over to the channel, America's Talking Network, 8 o'clock Central. Each and every weekday morning, we'll break things down for you here with Illinois in Focus Daily.
Seems uncalled for and may in fact be unconstitutional and illegal.
You're going to get a lot further working with the administration than you are being an obstructionist.
That's Governor J.B. Pritzker and Senate Minority Leader John Curran talking about the incoming Trump administration policies Democrats see as objectionable, while Republicans are saying some of these things are necessary. Good morning. Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. If you didn't see there, a message that incoming President Donald Trump posted to his social media platform, Truth Social, it just simply shares a message from Tom Fenton, who heads up Judicial Watch, a conservative-leaning litigation unit, I guess, that goes and sues states like Illinois over things like election issues and so on. But Trump shared a message from Tom Fenton that, well, let's just go ahead and read that message. It said that good news reports are the incoming real Donald Trump is going to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden invasion through a mass deportation program. To that, Trump just messaged true. Well, Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about this yesterday at an unrelated event. Here's that question and the governor's response.
You may have heard this morning President-elect Trump confirming on Truth Social that he is likely to declare a state of emergency for deportation and then use the military to do that. What would that mean here in Illinois? Could he use the Insurrection Act to call the National Guard? And how would you respond to that?
We, of course, are deeply concerned about, the President of the United States calling out military inside the United States, where people are peaceful, even if there may be people who are undocumented. But the idea of calling out, the Army into the domestic confines of the United States seems uncalled for and may in fact be unconstitutional and illegal. We'll look into that. I honestly, he says a lot of things. You never know what he's telling the truth about. So we'll have to see.
Now, the governor, obviously no stranger to the issues of an executive of a government declaring disasters, declaring emergencies. We had that for well over 2 years during the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it was actually officially lifted like May of 2023, so more than 2 years. But if you look at the governor's list of disaster proclamations he's issued on his official website, you can see that long string of COVID-19 disaster proclamations. Yes, they changed over time. If you recall, at one point, Pritzker said you couldn't have a certain number of people in a boat outside in the same boat. He had a whole bunch of other orders limiting businesses that you couldn't have more than 25% capacity or something to that effect. He closed schools for a substantial amount of time. So clearly, that list of disaster proclamations from the governor during the COVID-19 emergency, something people are critical of, no question. So where do we go from here? You've got the governor having reacted to Donald Trump wanting to declare an emergency for the immigrant crisis. Well, the governor says he's worried about that. He called it possibly unconstitutional, illegal, and uncalled for. But even the governor, he says that despite him having his own disaster declarations, which clearly show gubernatorial disaster proclamation for asylum seekers. He's had this in place since September of 2022. So you can see all of the different disaster proclamations that he has, months upon months of disaster proclamations regarding, quote, asylum seekers. What does this ultimately say? It says on August 31st, without notice of 2022, Illinois and Chicago received buses sent by the state of Texas transporting Central and South Americans seeking asylum in the United States. In the interest of aiding the people of Illinois and local governments responsible for ensuring public health, safety, and welfare, Governor J.B. Pritzker has declared the state of Illinois a disaster area, allowing the Illinois Emergency Management Agency to implement the State Emergency Operations Plan, coordinate state resources, and aid with emergency purchases necessary for response. The Illinois Department of Human Services will lead that agency effort. But the most recent proclamation from November 8th, so just a handful of days ago. So clearly, Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that President Trump declaring a national emergency about the border is worrisome, but he has his own string of disaster proclamations for the state of Illinois. Fascinating to hear that. But the governor was pushed a little bit yesterday, had an unrelated event in Joliet about this, and the use of maybe the National Guard, for instance.
Well, he does not have the ability to call out the National Guard inside the confines of the United States. The governors do. There are two different provisions of the act that authorizes the use of the National Guard, Title 10, Title 32, and he doesn't have, under either one of those, the ability to call the National Guard out, again, in the United States of America. He can, however, call out the National Guard to fight in foreign wars, and indeed has done that. We've sent many, many thousands of National Guard over just my term in office to serve abroad, and that's at the behest of the President of the United States, whether it was Joe Biden or before him, Donald Trump.
So again, the idea, though, of using the military to go after violent non-citizens for a mass deportation program, One person's emergency declaration is another person's unconstitutional order. So you can kind of see how the politics plays out with this. Last week, before Trump made that announcement that he does plan on making a national emergency declaration to tackle the border crisis and do a mass deportation effort, I asked Senate Minority Leader John Curran here in Illinois to respond to, Pritzker saying, hey, if you want to come to my people, you have to come through me, and Tom Homan, Trump's pick to lead the border issues, saying, get the heck out of the way. Here's what John Curran had to say about that, and in particular, the possibility of Illinois losing resources if it doesn't cooperate with the incoming Trump administration.
When the chief executive of our state, right after the election, gets out in front and tells Illinoisans he's not going to work with the administration and he's going to stand in the way and obstruct the administration that was just elected, it is likely going to be met with a response from the incoming administration. We need to all work together. And that's why I would point to the governor. Take a look at the example of the governor of Pennsylvania. Democratic governor, but the tone he has set has been one of collaboration. You're going to get a lot further working with the administration than you are being an obstructionist. As someone that has spent my legislative career in the superminority, you have to have that willingness to work in a collaborative manner. So I would certainly encourage the governor to change his tune and find a working path that's going to be best for all Illinoisans.
So
Thank
again,
you, everyone.
Is that an endorsement for Shapiro?
Senate Minority Leader John Curran last week. Again, the governor saying that Trump's declaration of an emergency to deal with the border crisis might be unconstitutionally illegal and uncalled for. But this coming from a governor who had month after month consecutive disaster proclamations for asylum seekers, with the most recent one, 30-day order, coming just a handful of days ago. We'll see if this continues to develop. It surely will. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with America's Talking Network. Back at it with fall veto session at the Illinois State House, and what is the possibility of some substantive things happening? Not too sure. Last week they canceled Thursday. They were only in 2 days. They have 3 days scheduled this week, but could they come in and end up canceling Wednesday and Thursday, or are they going to go throughout the entire week? Well, what could possibly happen here? It's a great question. Governor J.B. Pritzker, not too sure.
There isn't anything that I can name you right now.
We've got to work on solving these problems. Our immigration policies in the state of Illinois have been a mess, and we also need to be preparing ourselves from the likely adjustments for not taxing tips and overtime wages.
That's State Representative Ryan Spain saying that there are things to be done. So welcome in Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, get the headlines at thecentersquare.com, and get the podcast where you get podcasts. So just an overview of the Illinois General Assembly for everybody out there. It's state government. You've got Illinois House and an Illinois Senate. There's more members of the House than there are in the Senate. Very similar procedures, though. They hold hearings. They file legislation. They pass legislation. The Illinois General Assembly is dominated by Democrats. They hold the supermajority in both the Senate and the House. That's a 2-year term for the General Assembly. Now, some state senators have 4-year terms or 6-year terms or even 2-year terms. State representatives are elected every 2 years. So the most recent election we just had on November 5th was for state house seats as well as for president of the United States and members of Congress. So it doesn't seem like anything's going to change from the 103rd General Assembly we're in now to the 104th General Assembly that's going to be seated in mid-January. So that political dynamic, Republicans are still in a super minority with Democrats essentially able to guide and steer what legislation and priorities get passed. Now, we're in what is typically fall veto session. So the legislative calendar each year one of a General Assembly, year two of a General Assembly. We're in year two of that General Assembly now at the tail end, getting ready to go sine die, which means everything from the past 2 years is done. If it didn't pass, it's not going to pass. And a new General Assembly is going to be seated where people can file new legislation. So we'll see what comes to the surface in mid-January and beyond. But the legislative calendar, we're in the second of 2 years. They have spring session where they have to pass legislation with a regular majority by May 31st in order for legislation to take effect July 1st. So they do all of that. January they're going to be coming in, and then February kind of slow. March might pick up a bit. April, a lot of activity. May, tons of activity. It's pretty busy. But then over the summer they take off, and then they come back for fall veto session, which is what we're in now. And that's where they're supposed to be taking up bills that the governor vetoes. The governor's office didn't veto any legislation the legislature passed this year. I think 469 bills were passed into law. The governor signing all of them, no vetoes. So there's nothing for them to do. But then you look back 2 weeks ago today, you had an election with Donald Trump getting the popular vote, the Electoral College. Republicans have control of the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. What does that mean for the General Assembly and veto session heading into an incoming Trump administration? Last week, Governor J.B. Pritzker said he really couldn't think of anything off the top of his head.
There isn't anything that I can name you right now. I mean, I'm sure that in the discussions that I'm having with the General Assembly, members of the General Assembly, as well as with other governors, things will pop up over the next, little while. But it's not something that I think that we'll have to address during this veto session. I haven't heard anything that has to be addressed right now during this veto session. Having said that, there is time to be able to do that before the January 20th inauguration.
So the governor, not really sure much is going to happen during veto session. So that's the head of the Democrat Party, essentially, here in the state of Illinois, saying, we'll see what happens. Republicans, though, they say there's a ton that legislators can start working on to get ready for a Trump administration, especially when it deals with economic issues and even migrant issues. Here's Republican State Representative Ryan Spain.
Well, based on the comments from Governor Pritzker last week, clearly the wrong lessons have been learned. Remember, this is the same governor that came to the House floor, pointed at Republicans and called them all carnival barkers and doom grifters. And now here he is offering some sort of gubernatorial macho man moment, saying that Donald Trump needs to come through him in order to deliver help to the people of the state of Illinois. Governor, let me be clear, that's the wrong message. That's not the lesson that we should be taking from the results of the election last week. We need to be thinking about how we can work together and improve the state of Illinois and build on economic growth that should be coming forward for our nation. We've got to work on solving these problems. Our immigration policies in the state of Illinois have been a mess. They've led to out-of-control spending that have placed priorities in the wrong place in terms of healthcare spending and asylum assistance. We need to fix that, and it's something that the federal government will be working on very intently. We need to resolve and reduce our high energy prices in the state of Illinois that have been delivered through green climate initiatives that the governor has focused on, but they've had a consequence of driving up utility bills all throughout the state of Illinois. We need to be preparing ourselves for the expiration and the redrafting of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Remember, in 2017, tax reform was passed by Congress. It expires next year. In Illinois, we've spent that time decoupling ourselves from the federal tax code in order to create additional revenue gimmicks, as Leader McCombie talked about, to pad the state budget. We need to recouple with the federal tax code so that any of the changes that are made to facilitate economic growth can actually benefit us here in the state of Illinois, whether that's changing our estate tax, our depreciation laws, the way we do and offer operating loss carry forwards. We've made deliberate decisions in the state of Illinois to move away from those policies at the federal level. It's time to rejoin so that we can benefit from economic growth that needs to take place. And if I were Governor Pritzker, I would be reaching out to President Trump saying, how can we work to restore our SALT deductions for the state of Illinois that could provide property tax assistance, which is repeatedly one of the main issues that we hear about again and again from our constituents. And we also need to be preparing ourselves from the likely adjustments for not taxing tips and overtime wages. These are the things that we should be working together on now to prepare ourselves for new realities in Washington, D.C.
So clearly the Republicans are looking at the economic issues, the issues of taxation and having the state. And I remember when this happened, when Trump's first administration came in and they got the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in place, Illinois worked to decouple from the federal tax code. Well, Ryan Spain saying we need to recouple with the federal tax code. We need to be looking at the possible ending of taxes on tips, and how's Illinois going to do something similar or react to that. So a whole host of things that Spain laid out there that could be tackled by the General Assembly. But again, they didn't do any of that last week. They didn't do any of it, in committees or on the House floor, or didn't really hear any of those substantive conversations. However, there's been a lot of push about, abortion and whether or not prayer can be in school, or the migration issue and sanctuary city and sanctuary state policies. So we'll see what happens. Of course, go to thecentersquare.com, get the latest headlines, and stay up to date with what's going on, all right? Newsletter at thecentersquare.com, podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts, Illinois in Focus. And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell for America's Talking Network.
Since my earliest days in office, the General Assembly and I have relentlessly pursued one of the most ambitious climate agendas in the nation. One of the focus areas for a more climate-friendly future is reducing carbon emissions from internal combustion engine cars and trucks. Embedded in that effort is an enormous economic opportunity.
You can't force people to buy electric cars. It's not going to work. We've invested billions of dollars into the EV industry.
That's Governor J.B. Pritzker, followed by Republican State Representative Dan Calkins, concerning Illinois' energy policies and the push for more EVs, electric vehicles. Yesterday, the governor was in Joliet unveiling a 400,000 plus taxpayer-funded EV charging ports at a public park in Joliet. This after the state of Illinois was the recipient of tens of millions of federal tax dollars for the U.S. EPA's Clean Energy and Pollution Reduction grants. A lot of money's coming out of Washington, D.C. in the lame duck months of President Joe Biden's energy initiatives, the Build Back Better initiative that didn't actually materialize and instead turned into the Inflation Reduction Act, which really, according to economists, didn't really do much to reduce inflation. But a lot of so-called green energy policies being pushed. Last week, Governor J.B. Pritzker was joined by the U.S. EPA to announce the issuance of the Clean Energy and Pollution Reduction grants for Illinois. This was $430 million that the U.S. EPA is pushing out. Well, one of the officials from the U.S. EPA was there to talk about this, and here's some of her response to a question about this money's coming out during the Biden administration. What happens to similar dollars from Congress that might not come out of the Trump administration? Here's that official from the U.S. EPA.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Deborah Shore, Regional Administrator for EPA Region 5 and manager of EPA's Great Lakes National Program based here in Chicago. Well, as I understand it, if it's obligated, then it's there. I was in Minnesota yesterday, which received nearly $200 million through Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. It's in their bank account now. And so we are working really hard to make sure that the $431 million coming to Illinois from the CPRG and the 90 million plus from Clean Ports is going to be in their accounts, and it can't be taken back. Yeah, I can't speak to what might happen. We are just working as hard as possible to make sure that those funds that Congress allocated get dispersed and deployed in a way that makes a difference in people's lives.
And we're talking about tens of millions of dollars all across the country. If you go to thecentersquare.com and just simply search for U.S. EPA climate and pollution grants, you will see all of these headlines. I'm just going to read through some of them. Port of Virginia set to receive $380 million. You've got Colorado getting $2.5 billion in federal taxpayer funds for rural electricity expansion, $30 million headed to Arizona. You got $129 million from EPA flowing to Colorado to, quote, decarbonize. King County awarded $50 million. Oregon receives $197 million. New England set to get $500 million for heating pumps. And a whole host of other I mean, this is just a lot of spending coming out, right? Biden approves $1 billion in grants to combat environmental justice with shade. So clearly a lot of money's going out. And even that's just federal tax dollars. What about state tax dollars? Remember in 2019, the Pritzker administration, with a bipartisan collection of state lawmakers, doubled the state's gas tax and increased taxes and fees on a whole host of other things, included an annual gas tax increase every July 1st. That was meant to pay for a bunch of infrastructure programs. It was also around the same time that they passed gambling expansion with money going to infrastructure programs. Well, that was also something set up in the Rebuild Illinois program, was making sure that a lot of the tax dollars go to programs for so-called green energy issues. Pritzker yesterday in Joliet talking about the initiative and his goal as governor of Illinois.
Working together with tax incentives for new charging stations, federal support for this kind of infrastructure, and the grants and incentives from our utility companies, EV charging is becoming easier and more prolific throughout the state of Illinois. In fact, there will soon be a charging station along every highway, every 50 miles in Illinois. But to make sure that you can take a long-range trip across our state and never run out of fuel. Over the next few years, the electric vehicle ecosystem in Illinois will continue to grow.
So clearly a lot of money is going to be spent on this. State Representative Marcus Evans was in Joliet yesterday with the governor and other officials. He praised the governor, saying that he's getting things done.
Across the country, where's the heart of the United States of America? The heart is in the middle. The heart is in the state of Illinois. People travail through this state all over. These things will be used by folks from all over, definitely our community, but all over. And we pass legislation, we have to have trust that it's going to be what? Implemented appropriately. So I want to make sure we be crystal clear that we've sent that trust to Governor Pritzker, and he's took the promises and the hopes of seizure, but he's implementing it. We don't got to guess anymore. Open your eyes. It's right here.
So Marcus Evans praising the governor, saying that the Clean Energy Jobs Act, in coordination with Rebuild Illinois, spending tens of millions of dollars on EV related infrastructure, charging stations. You got subsidies going to companies to build electric school buses and so on. More from the governor from yesterday.
Since my earliest days in office, the General Assembly and I have relentlessly pursued one of the most ambitious climate agendas in the nation. Reducing air pollution from transportation is vital to a healthy future for our children and for our planet. One of the focus areas for a more climate-friendly future is reducing carbon emissions from internal combustion engine cars and trucks. Embedded in that effort is an enormous economic opportunity.
So the governor steadfast in wanting to bring about more taxpayer spending to facilitate the adoption of electric vehicles. I talked with Republican State Representative Dan Calkins, was that last week? We did discuss energy quite a bit, and he says that if Illinois doesn't get in line with energy policies that actually work and aren't, kind of paraphrasing pie in the sky, then Illinois is going to be left in the dust.
I've been on the Energy Committee for 6 years, Public Utilities Committee as well, and we've talked about this, and we've told the Democrats that what they're doing is not sustainable. What they're doing is driven by this ideology, but not what's real in reality. You can't force people to buy electric cars. It's not going to work. We've invested billions of dollars into the EV industry, and Ford, to its credit, a couple of months ago figured it out, and they're going to quit making EV pickup trucks. Stellantis, several months ago, figured it out. Yes, they cut a deal, but then they found out that they don't have any customers for those products. We're also at odds in this state. We're promoting this quantum computing center. We're looking for all these, fulfillment centers that we want to build around here. AI is coming, but we don't have the electricity. We don't have the grid. We've shot ourselves in the foot. We're going to miss out on opportunities because we can't supply the electricity at an affordable rate. I think that what we're going to see is that the Trump administration is going to see that this country needs to turn this economy around. We need to pay down our debt, 30 some odd $1 trillion. We need to cut our deficits, and they're going to start looking at these subsidies that are only benefiting a few. I've had pushback on that. They said, well, Musk is a friend of Trump's and he makes these electric cars. I don't think that's the issue. I think Musk knows that Tesla can make electric cars cheaper than anyone else and has a proven record and a network of distribution. He doesn't fear not getting these subsidies, not getting these rebates for people buying his cars. I think that you see it up in Bloomington Normal. That plant is not doing well. The production numbers are way down. And I think we're going to see a cutback on all of this stuff. And the wind industry, the solar industry is not immature. It's been around for a long time. If it's viable, if we can produce electricity and it can stand on its own 2 feet without huge government subsidies, so be it. Let it happen. I think we're going to burn coal. I think we're going to burn coal, natural gas. We're going to pump oil. We're going to open up Alaska again. We're going to ship liquid natural gas all over the world, oil all over the world. We will see gasoline prices come back down to close to $2 a gallon. It won't be overnight, obviously, because we have to open up our leases and build wells and be able to transport this oil to refineries. But this is the key. This natural resource, I believe, is a key to our economy, and it's a gift that we have. Coal is plentiful and cheap. Yes, we need to scrub the soot out of it, but all that technology exists. We've put artificial caps on emissions. And if Illinois doesn't fall in line, if we don't fall in line with the rest of the country, we're going to be the rust bucket. We will continue to decline. Companies are going to leave. It's already, as workman's comp and all of that, and property taxes, and the red tape and the corruption in this state have driven out industries, have driven out our population. And when the rest of the country booms, when our Indiana and Iowa and Missouri, when those states start to boom, and Illinois, because of the ideology of the governor and the far left Democrats in the General Assembly, this place will implode.
Obviously,
It'll get to a point where you can't sustain it. It'll be like Detroit.
Obviously, Calkins has a lot to say about energy policy as well, but he's on his way out. He decided not to run for re-election, giving himself term limits. So interesting to hear what he's going to have to say in the final few weeks here that he's going to be in office. It is Illinois in Focus Daily, on the ground with veto session. We'll have it all for you at thecentersquare.com. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning to get the latest here with Illinois in Focus and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Greatly appreciate it. I got to get out of here, head to the Capitol. They've got fall veto session for the second week. I'll see what happens, report out to you. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air and get the posts from X, get the clips at America's Talking Network, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for Illinois in Focus Daily.